The Incredible Hulk is one of the strangest entries in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, and not because it's bad in the traditional sense. It's strange because it feels like a movie that never quite figured out what it wanted to be. This was only the second film in the MCU, released right after Iron Man, and instead of feeling like the next confident step forward, it feels unsure, conflicted, and oddly disconnected. On paper, this should have been an easy win. You have Bruce Banner, a tragic scientist who survives a failed experiment and ends up harboring one of the most iconic monsters in comic book history inside his own body. That origin story alone is rich with emotional depth, internal conflict, and thematic weight, but the final product somehow turns into a film that feels like three different movies fighting for control of the same runtime. Right away, the movie establishes itself as an origin story, but a streamlined one. Instead of walking us through the gamma radiation accident step by step, the opening credits montage pieces together Banner's transformation in fragments. This was actually a smart creative decision. Most people already know the basics of how Hulk was created, and this method respects the audience's intelligence while also giving us little MCU breadcrumbs like Stark Industries and the Super Soldier program. It immediately ties Hulk into the wider universe Iron Man just introduced, and for a moment it feels like this movie knows exactly what it's doing. 5 years after the experiment goes wrong, we find Bruce Banner hiding in Brazil, working a low-profile job at a bottling plant, desperately trying to stay under the radar. The US military wants him not to help him but to own him. They want the Hulk as a weapon, and Bruce's want is very clearly established. He wants his life back. He spends his days practicing breathing techniques to control his anger and secretly collaborating online with a mysterious figure named Mr. Blue. This first act actually does a solid job of building intrigue and suspense. You can feel Bruce's paranoia, you can feel his fear of losing control, and you start asking questions like, how long can he keep this up, and what happens when he finally slips? But then we get this sequence that kicks the plot into motion, and this is where the cracks start to show. Bruce cuts his finger at work, a drop of his blood falls into a bottle. That bottle somehow makes its way to the United States, gets consumed by Stan Lee, makes him sick, and from that single coincidence the US military tracks Bruce down to Brazil. This chain of events is so absurdly convenient that it feels insulting. Instead of showing us how skilled and dangerous General Ross and his forces are, the movie just hands them Bruce on a silver platter. Wouldn't it have been far more effective to see a cat and mouse game, to actually watch the military earn the right to find him, because that missed opportunity comes back to haunt the film later. Once the military closes in, we finally see how effective Bruce's breathing techniques are, until they aren't. The warehouse chase sequence tries to build suspense by keeping Hulk mostly hidden, with soldiers firing into the darkness and giving us flashes of green rage. That idea is solid, but the execution is generic. It should feel terrifying, it should feel inevitable. Instead, it feels like a standard action scene, and when Hulk finally emerges and defeats Blonsky's team, Act 1 ends with a bang that feels visually loud but emotionally hollow. Act 2 introduces Emil Blonsky as a more serious threat. General Ross gives him an experimental serum to help him compete with the Hulk, and right away we're shown that this has consequences. Blonsky becomes faster, stronger, and more unhinged. This is where the movie could have really shined, because Blonsky and Bruce actually want the same thing on the surface, to be cured. Bruce wants to be cured of the Hulk. Blonsky wants to be cured of aging and weakness. Two men chasing different definitions of perfection, but the movie never fully commits to that parallel, and because of that, the conflict never feels personal. Bruce returns to the university where it all began and reunites with Betty Ross, who is now dating Leonard Samson. The emotional weight of this reunion should be huge, but the chemistry just isn't there. When the military attacks again and Bruce transforms into Hulk, we get another big action scene, and while Blonsky confronts Hulk and seemingly dies, the moment doesn't land because we don't know Blonsky well enough yet. Hulk and Betty escape, and there is a genuinely sweet moment where Betty calms Hulk down, reminding us that Bruce is still in there somewhere. That scene works. It shows the duality of Hulk in a way that the movie desperately needed more of. Bruce then plans to meet Mr. Blue in New York City, and when he finally does, we learn that Mr. Blue is Samuel Stearns, who has synthesized a massive supply of Bruce's blood. This reveal should feel horrifying, but the tonal shift is awkward. Stearns is played almost for laughs, and the movie jumps back and forth between comedic beats and dark isolation without the smooth balance the MCU is famous for. This is one of the MCU movies where that balance completely fails. Act 2 ends with Blonsky returning, forcing Stearns to inject him with Hulk's blood, literally naming himself Abomination in the process. He attacks Stearns, exposing him to the blood as well, setting up a sequel villain that comes way later in the MCU. Abomination then goes on a destructive rampage through Harlem, and Bruce begs to be released so he can stop him. On paper, this is your classic superhero climax. In practice, it feels empty. The final Hulk vs. Abomination fight is packed with CGI, but that's kind of the problem. The CGI already looked dated even when the film came out, and at times it genuinely looks like a video game cutscene. There's no tension, there's no sense that Hulk could lose, and because Abomination was introduced so late as the true antagonist, their battle doesn't carry any emotional weight. This isn't a Godzilla movie where spectacle alone is enough. This movie had over an hour to build to this moment and simply didn't do the work. After Abomination is defeated, Hulk escapes again, Bruce gains the ability to transform at will, and Tony Stark shows up to tease the Avengers initiative, and that's where the film ends. Bruce's main want, control, is achieved off-screen, completely disconnected from the antagonist and the central conflict. Doesn't that feel wrong? Shouldn't that moment have meant something? One of the biggest reasons this movie falls flat is the lack of a compelling antagonist. General Ross isn't really an enemy, he's a nuisance. Blonsky becomes interesting far too late. There's no sustained back and forth, no ideological clash that makes you lean forward in your seat. The themes of control and ownership are there, begging to be explored. Bruce fighting Hulk for control of his body, the military viewing Bruce as property. Bruce being dismissed as just a scientist, something other, something less. And yet the movie barely scratches the surface. There are hints of something deeper, Bruce's PTSD, his fear triggered by lightning and memories of violence, the horrifying idea that Bruce might be fully conscious while Hulk is destroying everything. What does that do to a person? What does it mean for strength, physical versus intellectual? These are fascinating questions, and the movie never commits to exploring them. Edward Norton, to his credit, shows immense potential as Bruce Banner. His performance feels grounded, intelligent, and emotionally restrained. It just feels like it belongs in a different movie, maybe even a separate Hulk trilogy that never had to worry about fitting into the MCU's tone. This film is definitely an improvement over Hulk 2003, but when you compare it to Iron Man, it feels like a massive step down. So I'll ask you this, do you think The Incredible Hulk failed because of its script, its timing, or because Marvel didn't yet know what kind of universe they were building? Would you have preferred a slower, more character-driven Hulk movie that saved the monster spectacle for the very end? Or do you think Hulk simply works better as a supporting character in the MCU? Let me know in the comments, because this movie is still one of Marvel's most interesting what-ifs. Thanks for listening, I appreciate it.